Okay, I felt like I had to like burp, but then it didn't. The burp didn't happen, so that's why I was like, hold on. Okay, anyways. Alright, so today we're going to be building the Neo65 Core Plus. There are 11 colorway options. There's burgundy, heather purple, black, titanium gray, teal, jade, slate blue, Mont Blanc, silver, spark white, and eclipse gray. 65% keyboard, O-ring, gasket dual mount structure. There's a 3D copper weight now, foam free, unibody case. They've upgraded the alu and carbon fiber plates. So the biggest thing is they've added a cut now right above the spacebar. Supports PCB gasket mount or gummy O-ring mount. Lock pull mechanism and connector, a pogo pin. There's 3 PCB options. There's tri-mode hot swap, wired hot swap solder. They're offering carbon fiber, aluminum, and PP for the 3 plates. Starting price is $105 all the way up to $160. Oh. In the case, you got the cable, you got the toolings, so you got the plate fork, you got the stabilizers. Looks like we got 2 plates. This is the foam and PCB screws. This is the O-ring and the mounting, we need that. And here's the board. Here's the case. Ooh, so this is the burgundy. It's actually more purple. So my top-down camera kind of makes it look more red. But if you look here, right? So this is in like the shadows. This is in bright light. But it is a burgundy, right? It's a pretty good color. So 65%, there is a arrow key blocker. You have the 2 thin bezels on the side. And then the 2 top, a little thicker, but not too bad. It almost looks like the top bezel is slightly bigger on the top than on the bottom. I don't know if that's illusion, but this one looks slightly smaller than this one on the top. Apparently, one of the biggest changes is they've changed the milling on the inside, so it affects like the acoustics, right? So these cutouts, in case you guys weren't sure, this is where the alphas would be, where like the keys would go, and these like little circles, that's like where the stabilizers would go. So we can see there's a pogo pin right here. There's a lot of internal screws, so it looks like 2, 4, 6, 8, 9. And then here's a side profile. So relatively simple side profile. You can see the top case, and then here you can actually see the bottom. So this is the copper piece, right? You can't actually see the mid piece, which is the same color as the top piece. There are no harsh corners on this, so no sharp corners, and there is like a little thin bezel all around. So relatively simple side profile. And then here's the back. So you got the signature Neo logo, right? You do have Neo engraved right here, so very subtle branding. So it's interesting. So instead of doing like an accent weight right here, so you do have this piece, which is quote unquote like the accent weight that also gives it the angle. But instead of opting for like an additional weight right here, they have, you know, machined this out so it's actually a little bit more shallow to kind of give it that shadow border effect. And then they have machined the logo in right here. So what we saw previously, they made this into like a badge where they hid the connector. This one doesn't have it, at least not my unit. You do have the 4 adhesive feet, so circular adhesive feet. And then this weight itself, I heard this one is like brand new, but this is pretty hefty. It takes up more than 2/3 of the back. And then here is the USB port side. So you can see the two-toned again, like we saw on the side. It has a centered USB port. And then here you can see the Neo logo again. So also more branding. So in terms of branding, you see it right here, and you see it right here and right here. I actually am a fan of these like little engravings on the top or by like the USB port. I actually do like those a lot. It's very subtle, but I like it. So you can see it's actually been machined out to look like it's a separate piece, but it's actually just one piece right here. But this one has the illusion that it's a separate piece, at least this part. It tricked me, and you can see that this copper weight on the bottom is where most of the board heft comes from. You can see there are internal weights. If you get the tri-mode, this is where your batteries would go. It has come with these internal weights, so you don't have to worry about any weird resonance. And then the good thing is that these weights are screwed in. So I've seen different implementations of this. So I've seen where people will just put foam. I've seen where people put the weights, but then they don't put the screws. But now this one is screwed in and it is just like the solid weights. So on top of this copper piece and then also the internal weights. But of course, if you get the tri-mode, you would just put the batteries in here. So there's a lot of screws to keep this in. So there are 9 different screws to keep this bottom weight. So centered USB port, you can see it's just right here. The connector does use the cable, but you don't really have to worry too much about this. This will just stay underneath, but there's your pogo pin. Theoretically, you will never have to open this unless, you know, something goes wrong, but you'll never mess with it. If you order the tri-mode PCB, you get 2 batteries pre-installed. If you get the wired hot swap, you get 2 stainless steel. If you get the solder PCB, you get 2 foam fillers. Oh my gosh, solder PCB is like second-class citizen. you just get foam if you get the solder PCB. But if you want to buy this one, it's $5. This one doesn't have any anchor points to make sure it doesn't like shift. However, that's where this has come into play, because by having this part, you know, stick out like ever so slightly, and also the illusion to make it look like multiple pieces, the weight would then slide and kind of, you know, anchor itself so it doesn't go any further, right? So what I mean by that is there's no like anchor point for you to be like, oh gosh, where do I screw it on, right? But then this part holds it in place so you don't like overshoot it. And then this top part is also slightly raised up, so you can see it will just fit into place. You can see it's slightly raised. So this is the plate fork you would get. So this is for your switches, and this is actually to help you pull the plate and PCB out if you do like something like O-ring or even the gasket, but you basically hook it in and it's just whoop. When I first built the core, I didn't have one of these. They're like, why didn't you use a tool? I'm like, what tool? And then I found out everyone was supposed to get one of these, but mine didn't have it. So I have 2 plates. I have PP and I have aluminum. There are 3 plate options. Carbon fiber is a 3rd, but I do not have that. So this one is pretty exciting because they did make a brand new addition, and that is adding this strategic little cut right by the space bar. So this is my first time seeing this. I've never seen this before. I've seen like cuts on the side or like, you know, above it, but they've intentionally added, you know, an extra piece and then cut it out. Pretty interesting. Other than that, no other flex cuts. Here you can see this is where the circles where the tool would go in and help you pull it out. You also have like screw posts or screw holes, I guess, to keep it together. Our aluminum and carbon fiber plates now feature a redesigned layout with a strategic slot above the space bar. This slot helps absorb impact, reducing collision noise and wobble while improving flexibility. The result is a more consistent typing feel between the spacebar and the rest of the keys. So this switch, or this cutout, is for like if you have the tri-mode. And then this one, this is not a flex cut, this is a cutout for the blocker, because when you put it in. So this cut is only on the aluminum and the carbon fiber. PP is going to be too soft for something like a leaf spring cut like that, so PP does not have it. So this part has not been cut out. But still with the screw post holes, this one to help you pull it out, and that's a switch. And then let's look at the PCB. So 3 PCB options. There's tri-mode hot swap, wired hot swap, or solder. And then if you're wondering why you would get solder, because this can theoretically do plateless. So if you're gonna do plateless, it's recommended you buy the solder PCB. So this is the wired hot swap. Looks like you do have caps lock indicator right there. So you can do step to regular caps lock. You can split the left shift. Your choice of bottom row. Looks like it has ISO support. You can split the backspace. Here's the back if you guys wanted to see that. So here's your connector. There is no physical reset button, but it's kind of neat because if you look at the back, they have actually labeled everything so you know. So you can take it out, and if this switch doesn't work, you'll be like, it's my H key doesn't work. It's very small, but they have labeled each one of the keys. So here, whenever you're building, you'll know like, oh, 7U. Oh, I actually wanted 6.25U, so it should go here. Pretty nice. Right, so it's the same thing over here. Right. you guys remember? Okay, this is a side note. Do you guys remember when we were talking about Neo, like Neo, like YO, and I was like, maybe we should rate T-Pain because that's like the closest I will ever get to like knowing Neo is by, you know, parasocial relationships through Twitch through T-Pain, and then. Come to find out, I got an email about how T-Pain and Neo were doing a gaming competition in Las Vegas, and I was like, I knew it. I knew they knew each other. Like, it was so funny when I saw the email. I was in genuine shock. It's like we were just talking about this. This is the Neo65 Core Plus. So Neo has been coming out with a lot of Core Pluses, and so this is their most recent one, where they've been coming out with a lot of updates on like their old boards or their older boards, right? So this is one of the new updates. Starting price is going to be around $105. It will go up to $160. It is O-ring mounted, or you can do PCB gasket mount. This is the burgundy color, but it'll come in 11 different colors. This board does use friction fitted mounting. There's no case screws to take apart the case. It's just technically two pieces, right? So you have this big piece and then you have this like copper piece. And while you can pick it up for this, the proper way is that they actually include this tool now. So you can see this nice like tool. So not only does it function as a plate fork, then you also have this one, which is like a key to help you pull out. So if you're having difficulties pulling out, they've cut out this like keyhole that you see right there. So what you would do is you would put it in and then turn it, and then it helps you pull out. So you can see I'm slowly pulling it out. Whoop, like that. So this is what I mean by the friction fit. So there's no like K-screws. These screws are all for the weight on the back. And they have it both on the left and the right side. So if you're struggling with one side, you can always move it. But yeah, it just locks in like a key. Looking at the inside of the case, you can see, so this is like the mounting hole for the gaskets, and then these are the posts for the O-ring. And yeah, so the O-ring you just friction fit in, gaskets you also friction fit in, and they've actually cut out this piece right here. So I don't know if you guys can see that, but they have cut this out right here so that the O-ring will slide in. You're not like pushing the O-ring against the blocker like this. Does it make sense? Instead, it will just slide through like that. So that is nice. Does use pogo pin, does not use the ribbon connector. I think it's like one of the bigger changes. The newest changes is actually the way that they've implemented the gaskets these days. So the gasket now has a new design, as you can see right here. It's still a dumbbell gasket where this would hook onto the PCB, except look at it now. So on the top, it kind of looks like a steering wheel. What they've opted to do is that it still has the nipple point, but now there are 4 cutouts on the sides. So you can see like that. So the reasoning behind this is before with the other Neo is this nipple part goes down. What you would have happen is before, when it was like just like the dumbbell gasket like this with no nipple, sometimes you would get it caught like this. Like you want it to flatten out like this, but there would be times where it would kind of like fold onto itself. So the idea behind having these holes is to make it like easier to slide, and you know, the mounting point is no longer like a flat bottom, it's now on this point. So by cutting out these gaps, it makes it so that it's less likely to fold in on itself, and then it's more pinpointed onto this point instead of like a flat piece like this. That's one of the changes they've made to the gasket. The O-ring is still the same, but if you are building with O-ring, you do have to use clip-in stabs. They did provide the clip-in stabs, so you're getting clip-in stabs with this. And then one other thing is on the stiffer plates, so carbon fiber and aluminum, they've created this like cutout above the space bar. So right here. Whoop. So TLDR, internal acoustic design has been redesigned. It is now pogo pin. Back weight is now like a very large weight, basically what gives the board the height, the heft. They've created this flex cut, or this cut in the harder plates. They've updated the gaskets. They've also are introducing a new color, which is the jade. The jade is super pretty. There are 3 PCB options. None of them have flex cuts, but it's tri-mode hot swap, wired hot swap, and then a solder. The biggest thing, so if you're buying this board, the biggest thing to note, the cheapest configuration is going to be 105 plateless if you get the solder PCB. However, one thing that is kind of, I don't want to say tricky, but it's like something that I noticed is the internals, right? So the board automatically internally has a cavity in case you decide to get the tri-mode and you add battery later. However, depending on the PCB you get, it changes the internal weights that you get. If you get the tri-mode, it'll automatically come with batteries. If you get the wired hot swap, it will come with the stainless steel bars. If you get solder, you get foam. So just be aware, if you go for the cheapest configuration, which is plateless solder, your internals will not be the stainless steel weights, it will be foam. Thankfully, the weights aren't too expensive, it's like $5. The importance of the weights is that basically when you have an empty cavity, you want to fill it with something so that it doesn't have like weird resonance. And the stainless steel weights that they've given, it has 2 screws to keep it down. I mean, I feel like foam is enough to do it, but if you really want like more of the heft and something that is, you know, like securely down, you can buy the stainless steel weights, but you only have to buy it if you get the solder PCB only. You can get brass or copper weight. I have the copper weight, so it's going to be a little bit more expensive. It's a pre-order product. Fulfillment time is 4 weeks. However, that's like 4 weeks for them to like make it, but then it's like a different thing for them to ship it. So overall, my thoughts. It's hard to argue when the board is like sub $200. For a custom keyboard, I definitely feel like I think it's solid. I will say that with the spacebar and them saying, you know, they added the cut to kind of make it sound more similar to like everything else. I will admit I wasn't listening like too carefully. Maybe you guys noticed. I will say things did feel consistent, but I think it's also the nature of like the board itself. It's not like a tray mount, but they've basically taken this idea of like creating a keyboard from one single block and like slowly adding add-ons to it to make it feel like more premium. So that's what they did, right? The board could have just been like one solid piece, which is easier because now you don't have to worry about the top, the bottom, and the mid piece. So in terms of creating it, it's just one singular piece. However, they've added the additional to make it feel more premium by adding like the bracelet or the copper. And yeah, I mean, it's hard to argue with the price. For the gaskets, I do think that is the best change that they've made because I too ran into that problem where the gaskets would like fold onto itself or wouldn't like sit properly. So I do think this updated design is a good thing. They've taken what they've learned from the other boards and they have improved it. And also the fact that this is no longer a ribbon cable, because before this was a ribbon cable and that was a real pain in the ass to do, especially for something that's like friction fitted, right? I feel like there's a lot of boards around this price point these days. If I were to say like, you know, why would I buy this over like a competitor? I would say I would pick this if I liked the colors. I think Neo boards have always been really solid. I think they're always like constantly improving. There's not much that I could be like, that's not good or that's not good. They fixed a lot of the issues that we saw with like the previous boards. I'd say if you like the mounting style, because I will say that the O-ring and the gasket felt very similar to me. I'd say in some cases O-ring was like a lot louder. The build was pretty straightforward and I would consider it if I want something that's like a softer typing feel, because this doesn't have top mount. So to kind of think about like the other boards they've come out with, it's like you have to think about the colors that they offer and also the mounting styles that they offer, right? I would feel comfortable building this as a quote-unquote like beginner, especially with this new change and also with this change. In terms of the things that they've updated to like, you know, make the typing feel more consistent or to make it feel more premium. What makes a keyboard feel premium to you guys? Is it like how hefty it is? It's hard to determine like what makes something feel more premium. When I think more premium, I think, you know, alu or copper, and they've done that here. I feel like Neo is just coming out with more and more ideas to make it feel more premium but for half the price point. And I don't know where they're making cuts. I just feel like as they're getting more success from these boards, you know, they're able to take that and update it. There was nothing weird about mine, but here's the thing is that other builders might run into different issues. So really, if you're interested in this board, while it is cheap enough to just be like, fuck it, I'm gonna get it, I would still, you know, wait to see what other people are saying, because some people might have like a solder build and run into weird like resonance or clearance issues, or, you know, just wait and see like all the different configurations. But for the price, it is a solid board. Would I recommend this board to someone who's looking for something? Yeah, I would. I'd be like, do you like the layout? Do you like the color? Then you should try it. You know, hopefully that helped you guys. I did feel like some of my O-ring builds got a lot louder. I actually thought this did sound good without foam. I do feel like adding foam made some of my mods like more pronounced. That might sound weird to say, but I felt like it made the mods sound more distinct. That's the board. That's the build. Thank you, Neo. Thank you, QK, for sending it out to me. That's the build.